Successful Edition. Welcome to the show, Wizard, Warrior, Wanderer, Wayfarer, and whoever, whenever, and wherever you may be. We're broadcasting out of Twilight Zone, Old Peking, in the central kingdom of the Celestial Dragon. Once again, it's still the 13th of July. Today is a Wednesday in the 22nd year in the second millennium. So I wanted to address a question that I got from Russian Lad to continue a story, a narrative about a dog I had when I was a kid, or when I was like 19. So he was a Rottweiler. His name was Kane, and I got him when I was living in San Diego in Southern California. And I actually got two Rottweilers at the same time, and I named them Kane and Abel. But we were planning to move. I was moving from San Diego to the Tennessee Valley, and I had to make a cross country journey. And I didn't want to try to take care of both dogs. So when they were only about a year, a friend of mine, and he bred Rottweilers for years and years and years. The whole family did. It was just something they did. I had a brother in my family who actually bred pit bulls. Uh, he owned a construction yard and he bred pit bulls for yard defense. Like at the supply yards and stuff, he would always keep pit bulls on hand for nighttime guard duty. Anyway, I had the Rottweiler. He was a couple of years old, and we moved cross country, which is about a 2,000-mile journey. And I did it in a little minivan, and so I brought my dog with me, and it was really hard for the dog. Like, I didn't realize how tough it was going to be. I had made the journey before, but I didn't realize how hard it would be on a young dog like that. But he survived the journey, and he was my companion on that trip. Actually, had a couple of parrots too. Had a double-headed yellow Amazon yellow-headed parrot and another smaller one, which we ended up giving to another guy that helped us move at the time. But the situation in San Diego was really good for keeping dogs because we had a big house with a big yard, and the yard had a very good, well-built fence all the way around it, wooden fence, and there was no real way for the dog to dig out under the fence. But when I got to Tennessee, it was in the countryside, and the piece of property we got was across from another guy who did all kinds of farming. He did soybean farming and corn farming, but he also did some pig farming, and he would rotate. I realized after years of having lived there, he rotated his fields around. So he would use a field for crop rotation for corn one year, and then the next year he would grow soybeans on it and then plow them back into the earth, and then he would put pigs on it. And whatever the pigs do, I don't know the exact reasons why farmers rotate crops the way they do or exactly how they do it. But I remember watching the pigs and I thought they were cute. Bunch of baby pigs. Like one pig would have 20, seems like at least 20 piglets. And they would all run around with the mama pig. And so my dog snuck out a few times. He got away. I chained him up and he got out and he went into the woods. And I followed him into the woods and I found him and he just wanted to run. But I was working. I got a job at the time and I was working 5 days a week and going to community college. So it turned out that I didn't have much time to spend with my dog. And so the dog and everybody was working. My mom took a job. I had a sister there that was living and working, and I was there and living and working. And so everybody was kind of gone from the property at varying times. And I realized that it was pretty hard to keep the dog in the yard. But I tried. And he broke his chain a couple of times. They're pretty strong dogs. I don't know if you guys know much about Rottweilers, but they're basically like German war dogs. And oftentimes people will train them by tying heavy weight behind them and putting them in a harness and then have them pull heavy weight around the yard several times per day to do like muscular training. And so they've been bred over many generations into being very powerful, big jaw. They're kind of a mastiff variant, and they were used by Germany for a long time in combat. They put big spiked collars on them and plates of armor and stuff and take them into combat. But they're really good dogs. They can be very friendly depending on how you raise them, but they are killers, and they will oftentimes kill smaller animals, cat, other dogs, that kind of thing. But Kane got out a couple of times and he killed the farmer's pig. I mean, the farmer had, dozens and dozens of pigs. But my dog Kane, back in the countryside, so he got out once and he ended up killing a couple of pigs. And the farmer said that he like literally ripped one of the legs off a pig and just blood feast. And I remember he got out and he was gone for a couple of days. And when he got back, he was covered in fresh blood. And I thought that he killed something. I thought he killed either a wild animal or maybe even a deer, or was dining on a deer corpse or something. But I couldn't figure it out. And he got out again, and I followed him into the countryside, into the woods. I got home, he was gone. He broke his chain and dug under the fence, and he was out about and on the rampage. And the farmer had already warned me and said that if he came into his field again, that he would shoot him. And so I knew that there was a pretty good chance he was dead or he'd been shot or whatever. But I went out into the woods and looked for him for a while, couldn't find him. A couple days later, tried again, went out looking, calling for him, and I found a trap that the farmer had set, and it was like a piece of wire and like a snare trap, a loop trap, and I guess he had set out some food or something. And so when my dog had got out, he went looking for the food and got his head caught in the wire. And there was blood all over the place. There was blood all over the wire. There was blood on the ground. And it looked like he had been shot as well. So he got trapped in a wire trap. And then the farmer came out and shot him. So that's how I found my dog. But at that point, I I decided that unless you have the suitable confinement for an animal or the suitable conditions for keeping an animal like that, uh, I like to fight, and I would fight with my dog a little bit, and I liked that they were big and strong, and it was fun to have them around. And when I was in San Diego, like I would have him pull me around on my skateboard, and he would stay at the yard. And there were lots of other dogs. Lots of people kept those kinds of dogs in San Diego at the time. We're talking San Diego in the early 90s. So there was only around 1 million people in the entire county. I think less than 1 million people in San Diego at that time. And so it was pretty much a backwoods kind of culture, even in the LA area. Of course, there's Coronado and downtown and Old Town San Diego and those kinds of things. And the beach areas were all very well developed. But the inland valleys, a little bit, and the plateaus. I lived on one of the plateaus off the Highway 8, and they were still very rural. And homes were not, they were set up in nice, much nicer suburbs than LA because they weren't right on top of each other, one on top of another. They were smaller, not smaller. The pig farmer in my mother's area, Jeff. Hey, Mozart Diedrich's out there in Happy Land. I just saw you in the ideas room. Good to see you, man. I was telling a story about in my youth when I was a teenager, well, 1920 at the time, that I had a Rottweiler who killed the local farmers, one of the local farmers' pigs. And the farmer ended up killing the dog because the pigs are of higher value than, or they're more expensive than a dog even. I remember that dog. I don't even think I paid anything for Kane. I think the breeder let me get my pick of the litter when when my friend found out that I was moving to the countryside and that we were planning, this was like a year out, he told me that I was going to need a good dog. And he gave me a couple of Rottweilers from one of his litters time and sold them, I think, for around 200 typically. But I didn't have that kind of money as a kid. And I'd have, but I don't remember paying him that much. I think he just gave me the dogs. Really? The farmer could be arrested for execution? That's not right. The farmer could be arrested for execution. No, I just took it as a loss. I mean, I knew that he killed the farmer's pig, or so the farmer claimed. And I remember he came back bloodied one night, and I just couldn't keep him locked up. He was too strong. And anything I tried to do to prevent him from going out while I was at work, it just wouldn't work. He always broke out. I think he even broke out of the house one time. I kept him. I didn't want to keep him in the house much because he would fucking tear shit up, and I didn't have the times and energy. I really didn't have the time to train him that he needed to be trained because I was working full time and going to school full time, and so he was at a disadvantage. And it's interesting too because one of the local sheriffs that lived nearby, he said, "I see that your dog's at the doghouse and chained up and stuff." And he offered to take the dog and raise him. He said, that's a good dog. And if you give him to me, I'll raise him, because he had a big yard and he had the time to do it. And I should have just given him to the sheriff. I told him I'd think about it. And then by the time I had, yeah, by the time, no, the shelters don't keep them in that area. They put them down immediately. And you can't even, they typically won't take them at all in that area. I know because my mom and my sister have lived there for years and years and years, and they've tried to deal with shelters and animal control, and the animal control will not take responsibility for pets in that part of America, in that particular county. They have no obligation to do that. They'll put them down. If you do put them there, they'll charge you, I think, $50, and they'll put them to sleep. So they'll cull them. But no, there's so many animals in that area that they cull. Culling means kill. They cull hundreds of thousands of animals every year in that county. I'll not specify the exact county where it is, but I'll just, needless to say, they cull skunk, possum, squirrel, deer, all kinds of snakes every year. Tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of animals are put to death because they interfere with farming and agriculture. Yeah, the U.S. puts on average, the U.S. Wildlife and Game Resource Management and Bureau of Land Management, the real BLM, right? The Bureau of Land Management, they cull anywhere from 2 million to 10 million animals every year. So that's pretty common practice. Like recently, we've seen a lot of culling of beef cattle, and it's meant to control the price of beef in the market. So they're planning on increasing the expense of beef over the next few years. And as a result, they're culling thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of cattle. And the reason being for that is, I don't know if you know much about agriculture, and I don't know much, but I do know a little bit about it, that the farmers themselves do not own the livestock, and they do not own the crops or the seeds. So the seeds and the animal husbandry are owned by corporations, big guys like Bill Gates, Monsanto, these types of folks, Chinese companies. None of it is owned by the local farmers who process those things. So we'll take seeds, for example, first. If Monsanto, they will own the genetic DNA of the seed. They will be genetically engineered seed varieties. that are not heirloom seeds, and then the farmer will opt to get paid a salary to process those in their fields. And they'll go out and plow the fields and plant the seed, but the seed will come from a corporation, and their only their contract, the farmer's contract, is to go through the actions that will bring those seeds to harvest at the end of the season, and then to harvest and process them. But the entire time, all of that is owned by the corporation, not by the farmer himself. And so if the corporation says, okay, um, we want you, like, we gave you this amount of seed and we want you to just plow it all under. We're not going to ship it into the market, right? We don't want you to harvest it. Then the farmer has to do that. He does not have a right to harvest those grains and take them to market because they're not owned by him. He's being paid a salary within a year or whatever just to do the processing of it. But at no point does the farmer actually own it. The same is true with livestock. The livestock, in order to do commercial farming of livestock, you cannot use your own breeds. You have to use corporately owned breeds that are processed by the corporations in a certain method of genetic engineering and a certain amount of, vaccines and so on and so forth. You can listen to farmers talk about it. I do. I've listened. There are quite a few homesteaders and industrial farmers that I listen to here on YouTube, and I get a peripheral understanding of it. But according to what they're saying, they do not own those cattle. And so if the corporation says cull 10,000 cattle, then they have to go out there and kill off 10,000. Understand from farmers is that went wrong in 2019 is that there was a vast overproduction in resources. And so there was more grain produced than the world could ever use. There was something like 100 times more grain than could ever be used by the world. There were hundreds and hundreds of times more cattle than could have ever have been sold in market. You got to remember, it's a scarce production capacity, because in that 1 year alone, we could have fed the entire planet for something like 10 years just on 1 year's worth of production. And that was the first year they really did it, like a big culling of the meat industry, because it couldn't all be shipped out to China and it couldn't be shipped to other countries, which is usually what they do. They usually ship it out of country in order to process it. And one of the economic power that the world has ever seen. Like, they're talking about you being a big grain supplier and so on and so forth. And there's no real reality in that. The US has been and has always been and the number one exporter of grains and meats. I'm sure prosperity about. It wasn't capitalism. It wasn't democracy. It sure as fuck wasn't the U.S. government. It was freedom. Freedom of enterprise is what brought that about. Alex Jones covered that same topic on the show today. Really? It feels like me and Alex Jones are probably in sync. I'm thinking about it because recently I heard some farmers talking about water rights in Oregon, Washington, and northern Idaho. And they said that the Bureau of Land Management was going from district to district, county to county, and writing up and attempting to pass legislation that would remove farmers' rights to their own land water. And what they want to basically do is monitor the amount of groundwater on all farms and then charge farmers for the usage of wells and water tables that have, since the writing of the Constitution, it's been illegal, it's completely unconstitutional for the government to interfere in the water rights and the distribution of water. That was one of the primary objectives of the US Constitution, was to defend property rights, land titles, and rights to resources. Those are supposed to be in the hands of